A kind of a series of presentations where we want to encourage the group 4 kids, and as part of that session today we have VISHU-SSE. She's going to present on the topic Youth Leadership, the Sai Way. The bio, as per what we got from VISHU-SSE, is she's a senior at Hunter College High School, and she has been advocating for youth voice as part of the New York City Youth Leadership Council program, and she has also been organizing some of these programs for Asian American students at her school. And apart from that, she also enjoys working as a peer health educator at a community non-profit in Forest Hills, and as well as organizing 24-hour coding events for the high school girls. I don't know what that 24-hour coding events is. Maybe you can explain later. And she is passionate about taking Sai teachings and integrating them into her work for youth, especially the values that she learns from SSE classes. So without further ado, I request VISHU to give the
My most humble pronouns at the lotus feet of our beloved Mother Sai. Respected elders, dear brothers and sisters, salam to all of you. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about youth leadership and what it means to be a youth. I think especially as I graduate high school, I've been thinking a lot about my SSE experience and what I've got out of it being part of the program for so many years. And I think the biggest lesson that I've learned is just how much Swami cares about his youth. And as I entered different activities at my high school and beyond my high school, I found that something Swami really treasures is youth leadership. And so I want to focus a little bit on how the youth leadership has impacted me and how I've used it outside Swami and outside SSE, but how it all really comes back to Swami's teachings at the end. Next slide, please. Yeah. So I wanted to start off with a quote by Swami that was to his youth. So, the world's good fate, world's progress is dependent on the transformation of the youth today. Only when the youth transform themselves with good character will the world be able to experience ideal virtues. So I think this is really powerful because we've all heard the quote, the end of education is character, but what Swami really means by that just goes beyond just the individual person's education. Education in the material sense is important for your career, for making money, being happy, all of that stuff. But really what Swami wants you to do with your education is transform the world with your values. And so I think for us to do that as youth, we need to take initiative. And Swami has actually instituted so many programs beyond SSE for the youth to take initiative. And I was doing a little bit of research and I came upon this. Next slide. This event called the VISHU-SSE World Youth Festival. So this was a festival that Swami held for a few years in 2016, 2017, and essentially it was youth all over the world who congregated as part of the Sai family and talked about issues relevant to youth and how to stay connected with Swami. And so some of the committees that they had that were of interest to me were the Serve the Planet Committee, the Love All Serve All Committee, the Sadhana of Love Committee, and that committee actually went and they did Gram Seva in their countries. So there were more than 700 students throughout 20 countries who went back home, did Gram Seva for an entire day. And what I really liked about this Seva was that it wasn't like a specific thing that they did at every country. The youth actually in each country thought what would help our country best. And so it wasn't just something they did for fun. It was something they did to consciously better their environment. And the other committees that I thought were really interesting were the Young Adults Talent Development Country and the VISHU-SSE International Leadership Program for Young Adults. And so what these programs focused on was saying, well, okay, so you have the 5 human values that you learn in group 1 and group 2, but what do you do after that? What are the skills that you need to apply these values in the workforce and in life? And so as part of the leadership committee and the talent development, what they did was they taught young people how to talk to older people about their jobs, how to spread their message, and how to advocate for themselves. Because after you graduate high school, after you graduate college, you hopefully have a job and you're progressing, but a lot of the things that education doesn't teach you include how to just talk to people, how to find out what their stories are. And so I thought it was really important that Swami was advocating for those things. And so I wanted to bring those up before I started talking about my own work. Yep. So where I come in is I help supervise a program called the Youth Leadership Council Program. So this program is run by New York City Service, which is a branch of the New York City government. And so I help them supervise their youth leadership councils, which they hold in organizations throughout the city. So what really attracted me to the Youth Leadership Program was that its 3 pillars are policy, practice, and service. And if you really think about it, this is the same thing as Swami saying, you have unity in thought, word, and deed. The policy is the thought. Lawmakers come together, they think about ways in which they can help their community, they think about ways in which they can improve their community. But that's not enough by itself. The next step is the practice, which is like the word. So when you're thinking about practicing, it's about saying things, it's about communicating to your people how you want the laws to be carried out. So that would be the second part. And then the third part is, of course, service or deed. It's not enough to just say things, it's not enough to just think of things. You have to actually act on them and serve other human beings in your community. And that's what really makes a good policymaker, and that's what makes a good youth leader. And so when I looked at this Youth Leadership Council program, it really appealed to me just because those 3 simple precepts of thought, word, and deed are everywhere. And when you look at the slogan of the Youth Leadership Council program, it's Youth Voice Counts, which is really what Swami has been telling us all along as part of the SSE program. We as youth, it can be a confusing time where we really don't know who we are, we don't know what we stand for, but Swami from day 1, from kindergarten when you join the SSE program, tells you your voice matters, what you learn, what you know matters. And so that's why this cause is so dear to me. And I wanted to highlight a few of the different organizations that actually have youth leadership councils. So one of them is Green Thumb, which is the Green Thumb. That organization, you can probably infer, is an environmental organization. And actually they have a very interesting problem. Gardeners in New York City tend to be on the older side. So as they retire and as they phase out, they want youth to take their place, and they want youth to educate themselves about why gardening, sustainability, things like that are so important. So their Youth Leadership Council really focuses on getting youth out in the streets, getting youth involved in gardening, getting involved in sustainability, and that's really a lot like Swami's Serve the Planet committee. It's a lot like Swami saying we have to take care of our Mother Earth because she's the only Mother Earth we've got. Another Youth Leadership Council is Thrive NYC's Youth Leadership Council. So Thrive NYC is an organization that focuses on mental health. And I think something that Swami has always advocated for is being healthy on the inside and the outside. I think as part of the SC program, I've always been supported, and both by my parents and by the Sai family, and always said that if I have a feeling about something and if I feel like my mental health isn't as good as it should be, talk about it. Talk about how Swami can help you through the journey. And so I thought that was a really interesting council to highlight as well. And so the other 2 I wanted to talk about a little bit were the Housing Authority Youth Leadership Council and the Queen's Library Youth Leadership Council. So the Queen's Library Youth Leadership Council is focused on getting youth reading, getting youth involved in their own education, and really there's nothing Swami loves more than education. He promised his mother that he would build schools and colleges, and he did just that. He provided free education to so many people. And the Housing Authority, YLC, that I work with, they work on getting youth involved in housing rights and making sure that youth who are evicted have good workshops and good education events to go to. And Swami, again, always ensures that his youth have a home, his youth have somewhere to go. So I thought those are some of the YLCs that are very connected with Swami's mission that I wanted to showcase. So what I personally do is, as part of the supervisor for all of these YLCs, I have to kind of figure out ways to get the youth together and get them involved. So one way I do that is through training them. So what do you really train youth on, you might ask? So something that I thought was really important to me and something that I've gotten out of the Psy family is having access to so many adults who do so many different interesting things. I've gone through a lot of phases where I was like, oh, I definitely want to be a doctor, or I definitely want to be a lawyer, or I definitely want to be an astronaut. And no matter what, there was always someone in the Psy family who had an expertise about that, who I could talk to. And even though I changed my mind a lot, that resource was always there. But as I talked to youth throughout the city, I found out that a lot of them don't have that option. They don't have someone to talk to who can tell them what this career entails, or even that a career exists that they didn't know about. So something I do is host panels held by professionals where they talk about their careers and they talk about how they've enjoyed their career path, the studies that they've done to lead up to the career path. I also host networking workshops and social media workshops. So networking is a really big word now, but it's really important once you get out of college and you get out of high school to know how to talk to people and make connections, because a lot of the time the way you get a job is by talking to someone and saying, hey, like we talked before, I was wondering if maybe you would have room for me in your company, or even if you know someone who does. So a lot of the workshops that I host are focused on getting youth comfortable with talking to people, because a lot of times it's kind of difficult, it's kind of scary to go up to someone and say, hey, I'm interested in what you do. So the networking workshops are one part of that, and the social media workshops are really about how to manage your social media presence. As I'm sure all of you know, social media is a really big thing for youth. It can be hard to navigate exactly what you should put on there, what you shouldn't put on there, what colleges might see, so we kind of teach youth how to go through that. Yeah. So something that's really exciting about being part of the Youth Leadership Council program is that a lot of the times we as youth get to go to Albany, to State Hall, and actually make concrete policy changes. So one example of that is the Osborne Association, and their Youth Leadership Council essentially deals with the children of incarcerated parents. So children whose parents are in jail. And so what we do for them is we give them workshops about the things I talked about, but also a group of them recently went to Albany and advocated for things like financial literacy workshops for children of incarcerated parents, or even better education programs within the jails themselves. These are topics that often society doesn't like to talk a lot about. We assume that people who are in jail are like bad people and can never be changed. But I mean, the first pillar of Swami's philosophy is love all, serve all. And so I think one of the most valuable experiences for me has been kind of getting out of my box and thinking about people who most of society doesn't really think about. And so I really wanted to highlight this as one of the most exciting things about the YLC program. And so kind of my last responsibility is to host conferences. And so when you think about conferences, you probably think about like very professional events, which are definitely a part of the conference theme. But what our conferences are mostly to unite youth. So we have youth in all these different YLCs doing all these incredible things, but none of them really get to meet each other. None of them get to talk to each other and be inspired by each other's work. So we have two conferences. One in the middle of the year entitled the Youth Communications Collective, where youth communicate about the progress they're making, any possible challenges they have with their projects. And then at the end of the year, we have a mayoral youth conference where the mayor actually attends every year and a lot of other really important city officials. And we give different representatives of the YLC program a chance to talk about what they're doing and why this program is so great. So I think it unites more than 10,000 youth every year from boroughs, every single borough, and I think it's really special that we get to bring everyone together to talk about their accomplishments, to talk about what powerful things they're doing as youth. So some lessons learned, and that's actually a picture of me on a flyer that NYC Service made for the Youth Voice Counts program. But some lessons I learned was that not everyone has the same opportunities as you do, and so it's your responsibility and your privilege to level the playing field. So before I joined the YLC program, which I've been doing now for 4 years, I kind of assumed that most people had it as good as I did, that they had a support system, they had parents who always prioritized their education, they had all these great things. But when I went into the program and talked to kids who didn't have them, I realized that I was super lucky. And instead of taking advantage of those things for myself and kind of telling everyone else that they couldn't have it, I decided that it was my responsibility to give back to the community, to host these workshops on things that these kids might have never thought about. So I think that's something that I've definitely become a lot more aware of. And then this Swami quote I thought was very, very fitting. Even if you cannot oblige, speak obligingly. I think a lot of the time when you're working with youth and when you're working with policymakers, you never know when you're going to see them again, so you don't want to say something that's mean or something that's rude or something that's just not called for. A lot of the times I've had very strong opinions about something, but I've had to, rephrase and redirect. Take into account other people's considerations and say, okay, you know what? This is fine. We'll agree to disagree and we'll move on. And sometimes I've been nice to people just because I thought they deserved it, and then later, even a few years later, they'd come back and say, hey, I remember you did that. Do you need anything now? And so I think being part of the same organization for so long has really taught me how valuable that is. The third point is really important to me. Being a leader has very little to do with talking and a lot more to do with listening. I've always been a fairly outspoken person. That was never a problem for me. But I think a lot of the things that I learned was when I walk into a room of youth to stop talking for a few minutes and listen to them, listen to their points of view. I recently went to a town hall on educational policy, and I had all these opinions that I brought into the room and was ready to give my well-constructed speech, but I ended up just not talking for most of it because all the other youth were saying things that I had never thought of and things that I had never had to consider because of my privilege. And so a lot of the times, being a leader involves listening to what other people have to say and then integrating it, rather than just walking into the room with your own point of view. And I also learned that in relation to that, diversity really does strengthen our communities. Swami always says to value the points of views of everyone, of everyone in the room. And I never realized how important that was until I started doing this program. And lastly, but definitely not least, youth voice does count. I think as youth, we often feel like our lives right now are just in preparation for the future. There's nothing valuable that we can do right now. But seeing in so many inspirational youth who've made policy change, which is something that not a lot of adults get to do, and seeing youth who get to talk to the mayor or talk to his chief of staff, stuff like that is so powerful and sends such a good message that no matter what you want to do and no matter how old you are, it's possible. And so I just wanted to leave you guys with another Swami quote, which I really am taking into consideration while being a leader. I want you all to be leaders to protect the world. Leaders like lions, self-reliant, courageous, majestic, and just. The lion is the king of animals, and I want you to be king among men. So, as Sai youth, I feel like we have the duty to be the kings among men and women. And even if you're not a youth, regardless of where you are in your life, to be Swami's student is something that never ends. And so I show you all the remarkable power of being a leader. And also, I think something that's really important is that being a leader isn't something that you're born with. It's truly something that you are made into. And with Swami's tools and resources and with his everlasting love, we all have the tools to become a leader. Saram, thank you for listening.
Great.
I was just looking at some of these seniors, Bob was here for a long time, has been part of many programs, he's been leading many of them. He was also looking at the way you were, it was something like Swami was talking to her. It's a message that we should all really take in. Some of these, we would never knew about this piece if she wouldn't share with us all this time, right? VISHU-SSE has been with the center. We know that she sings great bhajans, and that's it. Maybe a few seva projects here and there, we know they'll join us. This is where the Sai organization is in safer hands. We can believe, and that Swami's mission is going to be alive for many thousands of years to come. and the future of the organization is definitely in their hands. And I see a leader already there and ready to take over the torch from all of us. VISHU-SSE, I know, keeping in track of the kind of an information that you were planning to cover, she really went super express, right? Thank you for thinking through that. But next time, take time, we'll have more time given to the youth so that we can hear you more. I feel this is like a nice feeling to listen to you guys, understand what you are going through and what suggestions you have. It's great for the center as well. Thank you and keep it up.